Hello, and welcome to Dungeons and Dopamine, Week 2. I'm Bree Fagan.
I'm Jess Wozniak.
This is our second installment of Dungeons and Dopamine, where we bring just a tiny bit of dopamine into your life every week.
And you missed us.
Obviously.
It's been a week. You couldn't live without us. You've discovered that we should make a Patreon and you should support us because then we could dedicate more time.
Yeah.
And
you could
do
get more updates and more dopamine.
all the dopamine.
No more dungeons, though. We're not providing dungeons.
I mean, it's not out of the question. If you pay us enough, we will do a lot.
True.
We like to play Dungeons and Dragons, so
We could somehow we'll figure out a
Yeah.
Patreon level
yeah,
that involves dungeons.
Maybe a dragons one.
Yeah,
Bring back the dragons to Dungeons and Dragons.
right. And dopamine. Dungeons and Dragons and dopamine.
Oh my. So, yeah, we are actually in the midst of a D&D campaign.
We are?
We, we're trying to be.
Feel like Bev Lorna still has something of mine.
Yes, your ability to grow facial hair.
Right. As a tiefling, I have no facial hair.
She's pretty spooky looking. I am the DM, Dungeon Mistress.
Ooh.
Mistress? Sounds.
Mistress.
I like mistress. Its proximity to mattress is startling, but as long as we enunciate,
Right.
we'll be good.
We did theater for,
Yeah,
a couple of years.
yeah, we're like pro basically.
Mm-hmm.
So we are in the middle of the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and it's going pretty good. Aside from that, we haven't been able to meet for over a month because we're adults.
And life happens.
I suspect we'll be back
Jessica
to it.
wanted, new countertops or something and had to, redo her kitchen. I don't know.
And like a whole upstairs thing
Yeah,
where we're
like-
building a bedroom and
Place for her kids to hang out. I don't know. She's so needy.
I am pretty needy. I even dragged Bree and her husband into the kitchen remodel. I mean, she volunteered, but she didn't want it to be her fault after she got here. It took us 4 hours to remove the tiled island.
That was a pretty fantastic tiled island you had.
We're still finding bits of tile chips everywhere.
I assume you will up until you move out.
I think you're right. And then the new owners will find it. And actually, I plan to die here. So maybe
It's
in
just
my
something
afterlife.
for Carly to deal with someday.
Yeah.
No big
yeah.
deal.
This is a her problem, not a me problem.
I tell Connor that all the time about her house. Well, this will be yours someday.
They
so.
can choose between, or they can vacation at one of our homes. In case you've all forgotten, our kids are going to get married someday.
Mm-hmm. They're only 6 now, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, 6 and 7.
6 and 7.
Carly
yes.
is a little older.
Carly's an older woman. Matured.
He needs that. Connor really does need that.
They love each other. It's adorable.
The best.
So, dopamine.
Dopamine. I have some.
Me too. It's awesome. I'm still on conspiracy dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
Conspiracy week 2.
I feel like you have quite a few of them.
I do.
I did Tangent Attack. I am sticking with houseplants, but we're going to I'm going to kind of get into houseplants and ADHD or mental health in general, which, again, could be a whole third topic, just houseplants and therapy. I'm sure I'll be distracted by next week. So
I would be impressed if you got a good 3 weeks out of this.
I would be impressed, too.
Because I feel like I've known my topics for a long time and group them together and study them ad nauseum. And I feel like you've got I'm going to do this. No, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this.
Well, I can only focus on it if the moment strikes just right.
Right.
So if I try to say that I'm going to have a topic that's like Addison's disease, I won't be able to actually talk about it until for some reason that becomes my hyper focus of the week, because otherwise it just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Also, we will pay the pet tax if we ever do talk about Addison's. We both have dogs who suffer, and we will pay the pet tax on our Facebook, which you should visit.
Yeah, we have one of those.
We do. It's
Dungeons and Dopamine.
And you should check us out. If you're one of our friends, you were probably invited. And if you didn't accept, we hate you.
And we're no longer friends.
Yeah, you're not guest starring on our dopamine show.
You don't bring us dopamine.
It's like Marie Kondo. You do not bring me joy.
Yep. I use the word joy about my plants a lot. They bring me joy. You'll notice like that actually in my podcast today.
Nice.
In my topic. I talk about joy quite often.
That's good, because mine is spoopy again.
Perfect.
It's spooky. It's just a little creepy. And then I'm going to totally ruin it. I have the perfect ending to my conspiracy theories today.
Yes.
I'm very excited to ruin everything for everyone.
And you're so good at it.
I know, I've got a talent.
All right.
All right.
So I'm going to start this week.
Yes.
And as I said, I'm kind of sticking with the houseplants thing. And honestly, this is mostly because I ran out of time with last week's topic. I could have kept going and decided just to make it into 2 topics. So this one focuses specifically on houseplants and ADHD, or houseplants and mental health. And I'll be completely honest, a lot of it is just from my own brain. It's my own thoughts and my own experiences. I did do some research, but it was all pretty general. There wasn't a lot of scholarly research specific to ADHD and houseplants. It was more like the benefits of nature in general on mental health, which I will talk about. But a lot of this is just from my brain. Take it as you will. I am not a doctor. I do not have any medical degrees. I just spend a lot of time on Google. And TikTok, actually, when it comes to ADHD.
Seriously, TikTok.
Because if you ever had questions about ADHD, it is on TikTok. So, me personally, I know you and I kind of built this whole podcast around us having ADHD, which we did not know as children.
No.
Because as much as it was diagnosed when we were children, it was not diagnosed in women, or
No.
girls especially. I don't think I met a single girl when we were younger that would have been considered hyperactive or ADHD. I remember plenty of the boys that were considered ADD or hyperactive, but obviously now that we are adults, we can see all those signs of both of us when we were younger, and see how we got to where we are now. I was diagnosed officially, I don't know, sometime in my 20s probably. I was seeing a psychiatrist for different reasons, actually for anxiety and depression, which is actually a big problem, that a lot of women are diagnosed with anxiety and depression when in reality it is usually ADHD. And that was definitely true for me. Once I was medicated for ADHD, I found that a lot of the problems I had with depression and anxiety didn't exist anymore, because it turns out when your executive function starts to work a little better and you can actually focus on things, life isn't quite so hard.
Yeah, and you don't feel so crappy about the things you couldn't do.
Yeah.
Because you actually gave it your best. You didn't look around at your messy house and say, it's actually too messy for me to clean.
Yes. And as an adult, I am medicated now. I did spend a few years unmedicated, especially when I was pregnant and breastfeeding. I prefer it at this time in my life. I don't think it's something I will always do. I like having my brain work, and because my brain currently runs on chaos, I always have multiple things that I'm juggling, so medication is for me. It is not for everybody. One of the things that I've actually found helps with my ADHD is houseplants. And this is kind of a double-edged sword, because it wasn't always that way, because with ADHD, houseplants actually sounds like an awful hobby because they require like extra care and regular watering, and you have to know stuff about them, and you have to remember they exist.
And they die if you get bored of them.
And if you don't remember they exist, they die. Like when I had my first baby spider plant, she did not always do well, and she has been on the brink of death a few times. And the biggest thing I've noticed is it's because if I have between 1 and 10 houseplants, I forget they exist. But if I have over 10 houseplants, they are usually always in my line of vision. If I am at home, there is always a houseplant somewhere. And that makes it much easier for me to remember that I not only own a bunch of houseplants, but they need me to care for them. One of the first things I did was when I got numerous houseplants is I tried to download an app. This is probably something that works for a lot of people. The one I downloaded was Planta. There are a couple other ones. It worked really well for telling me what plant I have and what plant and what it likes and doesn't like. But it would put in like automatic watering reminders, and instead of like listening to my plants or checking my plants, I would just water them because the app told me to. And it turns out you can overlove plants, and they don't always like that. So I lost a lot of succulents that way because they don't like to be watered every time the app tells me to. So at some point, obviously, it started becoming an obsession. I could see the plants wherever they are. But it started helping me because plants are a great dopamine burst. They are pretty, they are alive, and they reward you. So if you are caring for your plants well, they grow babies, or they grow new leaves, or they grow pretty flowers, or they produce fruit, or they do something, they give back to you. That is important for me because I need to know that whatever I'm doing has benefits, and I need to know that those benefits exist very quickly, because if I don't see any benefits, I lose interest and I'm bored and I'm out. I also enjoy houseplants because they're indoors, and I'll probably get into my gardening problems someday, but my biggest problem is I can't control the outside. So inside I can control what temperature it is, I can control if there are pests, I can control, that my animals aren't going to eat them. I cannot control any of that outside. So I knew that plants were good for me. I like the way they make my house look. I like the way they make my husband happy. They give me dopamine bursts. They provide presents, which is good for me too, because sometimes I forget to buy presents, and now I can just give people plants. They're like a healthy thing. There's some studies that maybe they're improving my air quality, which is good because I have allergies and asthma. I also look at them as kind of a responsible distraction. So on the days that I am stuck or frozen and I can't get my brain to let me do anything, it will always let me do plants. So if I can get through that first jump and get into watering the plants and talking to my plants and hanging out with my plants, then I'm on my feet and I'm moving, and by the time I'm done with that, I can usually move on to what else I need to do. So it's a really good way to motivate me to get up and use that executive function, but it's painless. It's not like me trying to convince myself to get up and do the dishes. So thinking about all of that, I tried to do some internet research. The coolest thing I found, maybe not the coolest, but one of the things I found is there is a health organization, that will decide or will give you a designation of being well certified. So your company or your organization or your building can be well certified. And well certified basically means that that building or that organization delivers more thoughtful and intentional spaces that enhance human health and well-being. And there's a whole handbook on how buildings can be made to be well certified, or how organizations can be well certified. And they require that either 1% of the floor space or 2% of the wall space in a well-certified building is dedicated to plants. So either in pots or a living wall or something like that, they have to be in these well-certified, these health-conscious organizations. And that's because most people probably know this, but every article I could find tells you that being outside is good for your brain. Nature is good for your brain. Getting outside and just not being stuck in our air-conditioned, cramped houses all the time is good for us. There's plenty of articles out now that talk about school-age children and how important it is for them to be outside. A lot of schools are starting to do outdoor learning. Connor's school, they asked him to, or we had to provide a towel in the beginning of the school year because when it's nice outside, they'll go outside and learn outside. They have a garden at the school that they work on. Some of the studies show it's not even just like being outside, but getting dirty and getting involved in the process just kind of lights up all those brain areas, so it helps them learn better. You see a lot of community gardens in inner city schools, and that's not just because these kids need more fruits and vegetables, which they do, but it's because teaching them to garden and getting them outside and getting their hands dirty is so developmentally important to like so many different parts of our brain, which I think is just incredible. I could read you a billion articles about how important it is to, be in nature and do things outside, but it all boils down to it's good for our brain. And the best part for me with the houseplants is it calms my brain. At least my type of ADHD, I feel like my brain is on all the time and it's just going and it's jumping from topic to topic and trying to remember all these different things I have to do. But on Friday afternoons, when I get out of job number 1, I set aside every week at least 2 hours where I go through and I water my plants and I check my plants and I talk to my plants and I see the new blooms that they have or what new leaves that they have and if they're flowering or what they're doing. And it is so calming and such a good mental space for me to be in at the end of a long week. So it's a Friday afternoon, I'm out of work for the weekend, or at least done with that job for the weekend.
Yeah, you're a realtor. You don't have a weekend.
I never get weekends, but I at least get those 2 hours of calmness and focus. And it, again, is something that brings me dopamine naturally. So I am always motivated to do it. It's never become one of those like, oh, now it's just a thing that I have to do and I hate it, because there's always that dopamine burst. There's always something new. And once you get up to 58 houseplants, if 1 or 2 of them die every once in a while, it's okay because it just means that it was too fancy to live in my house anyway.
I think that we're going to need to keep a running tally of your plants.
I have half of a list from my Planta app. There are a few that never made it into the app, but it also does keep a plant graveyard for me. So I know which ones I have killed throughout the year. Most of them are succulents.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's just...
I think those are one of the things I can actually keep alive.
Because you can just forget about them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, houseplants
I love
great
it.
for ADHD. They're great for all kinds of mental health. But they're, at least for me, they're really good for my ADHD. It's a really good dopamine burst. It's a healthy dopamine burst. And as I mentioned last week, most of the time plants are cheap or free. Like, unless you're wanting one of these fancy brands or one of these fancy named ones, my local plant shop always has a $5 rack. And it's maybe something that's not doing too well, or just a small thing that she propagated that can't be sold with the rest of it. And if they die, it's okay. And if they succeed and they grow, then it's like, look what I did. I just saved this plant off a $5 rack. Or it's a propagation from one of my friends, and if I kill it, then I can go get another one.
God called her home.
It just was her time.
It's better. She's not in pain anymore.
Yes. So besides the mess and the learning curve, there are very little downsides to this.
Now, question. Your indoor kitties.
I do not have indoor kids.
Okay, I didn't know if you let them in or not. Because
Yes.
I know you had a good boy who you were trying to convince the husband to let live in the house.
Murphy will live in my house eventually. Not while the big dog is there. Abby is not
while the husband
Murphy
is
in the
alive.
house. And she wins because she is 11 and a big dog, and
She's a
might
cranky old
have
lady.
a year left with her.
Right.
So she rules the roost. When Murphy does move inside, I'm hoping he's too fat and lazy to get on the counters, because I do know that a lot of my plants are toxic to animals. They're all up places where the dogs can't get at them, so that's not an issue. Or, like, there's one Rex knocks off all the time, but he's not interested in it, so it's fine.
So it's all good.
But that is something to consider for people with indoor cats or dogs or children that like to put things in their mouths. So one of my future topics now will have to be cat safe.
Yeah,
plants.
yes.
Writing it
I'm
down.
digging it. You'll have to be in the mood.
Yes. You'll have to, it'll probably be, close to when it's time for Murphy to move in.
Yes, exactly. Perfect. I love it. I love the correlation between mental health and plants. There's so much that I've never thought about, like the instant gratification. I'm very big on instant gratification. Like, probably too much, where this ice cream cone has made me happy. Perhaps I should buy another.
Yes. I know that feeling.
Yeah, it's not great.
If it brings you joy, you have to have all of it.
Exactly. And immediately.
Yes.
Why construction projects are hard.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't happen immediately.
Yep. It's like everything, like, so much. If I could just it. So the other cool thing about plants, most of them anyway, is they show you if they're not doing well. Like, especially like a peace lily is the whiniest plant that's ever existed. If she is a little bit thirsty, she like wilts. Like, I'll leave in the morning and she looks fine, and by the time I get home, she looks like she's dying.
She's drama queen.
Yes. So, but then I know I have to water her, and I
Right.
put water in her, and within an hour, she's like perked back up.
Yay!
It's the best instant gratification.
See, I never thought of that, and I love it. And now that you've taught everyone something and brought them up, I'm going to bring them down.
Perfect. We really have to keep each other level like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The balance, that's important.
There will be no joy. Not too much, anyway. So I'm back on conspiracy theories. This one toes the line a little bit of conspiracy theories. It's almost more of like urban legend, or I don't know, like almost paramoral.
I like this word.
What
can we make paramoral?
We'll work on this.
Yes.
So this is something that I've been fascinated by since I was a kid, which you might remember.
I had forgotten about it until you mentioned it.
Yes, when I told you this was going to be a topic. So the Bermuda Triangle. Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum.
So this was a big deal in the 90s for some reason. The Bermuda Triangle, like, they'd have books that came out and documentaries and like History Channel shows and stuff like that in the 90s. I was convinced as a kid that I had solved the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle, and the whole mystery was that the Garden of Eden was kept in the center of the Bermuda Triangle, and thus that's why you couldn't get there, because
we're not allowed back there.
No, we are not allowed back, and
we lost our chance.
Exactly. It would totally screw up all your instruments, and like people would disappear. So those were the people who had gotten there and unfortunately were struck down because they were not supposed to be there. It turns out I may have vastly misunderstood the Bermuda Triangle when I was a child. So
no.
I've strayed.
You mean it's not like that Rocco's Modern Life episode where it's just a triangle in the middle of the ocean?
I cannot confirm nor deny. I don't remember. My favorite episode of Rocco is when he gets all his groceries for 99% off, and he has a horrible time in the grocery store, and then he gets up to the register, and as she rings his final item in, the time changes by a minute and the sale is over. And so he goes nuts and he like screams that he's just had this horrible day. So then she takes it back down. She gives him the sale price, and so he puts them in his trunk, and as he's driving out of the parking lot, he hits a speed bump and the trunk opens and he loses all of his groceries.
I love that.
I know, right? Next topic.
Yes. 90s cartoons.
Absolutely. Real Monsters. Peak
That one too.
television. So, Bermuda Triangle. Anyway, it does actually form a triangle. It is called the Devil's Triangle as well. Kind of creepy.
Definitely not where the Garden of Eden is.
Really not. And so it starts at Florida. It goes to Bermuda, Puerto Rico, and then back up to Florida. And that's why it creates a triangle. It's first documented, where they can see it in writing, is thought to be Christopher Columbus. And what he said that he saw was lights in the sky. And my first thing was like, well, he's seeing northern lights. Like, they can see them all over the world at different parts of the year because of how it's reflecting and things like that. But he said that it looked like floating candlelight, and it ebbed and flowed like fire. So, really interesting, super creepy. One of the most popular instances of a disaster, I guess I should start by saying the Bermuda Triangle is known for disasters. People travel through it all the time, successfully, but there are an influx of crashes, airplanes, boats, ships, small, large, whatever. One of the most famous is Flight 19. In 1945, 5 Navy planes departed they were bombing a barge. And they succeeded in bombing that barge. But the audio after that turns really weird. There were 14 men on these 5 airplanes, and there were a mix of very seasoned pilots and then trainees. And on the audio recording, they seem really confused. They're arguing amongst each other, and they are talking about turning on equipment and stuff that there's absolutely no trace they ever turned on. They reported the 2 compasses aboard their aircrafts were not working, and they just didn't seem to know where they were going. The last documented instance of them, they said they were going east, when in reality they were actually flying south. They were completely discombobulated. And eventually they're talking about where they're going to land and how. And they just disappear. Completely gone, without a trace. No one's ever found their airplanes. No one has ever obviously found these men. 14 men in 5 airplanes are just gone. No evidence of them.
All 5?
I
thought you were going to say like 1
No,
went missing out.
They're all gone. We cannot find them, even to this day. And they sent out a rescue force to try and find these guys, which also disappeared. So total 27 people just missing. Gone. Nowhere to be found. Absolutely creepy. So, I think that even creepier than that, which really is that within the Bermuda Triangle, there have been documented 1,600 ghost ships. A ghost ship is when a ship gets found, is completely void of passengers, whether there's evidence that they were there or not. They are no longer. And there are 1,600 documented within the Bermuda Triangle.
That's a really big number.
It's a huge.
And that's the number of ships, right?
Not people.
So we don't even know how many people were on these 1,600.
Absolutely wild. So, I have a plethora of stories. that just I can creep you out with. If Flight 19 didn't do enough. There was a documented case, this was more recent, of a man traveling at 40 knots across the water. He was in his boat, a small recreational boat, and a green light came from nowhere, kind of sat next to him for a moment, kept up with his boat, and then sped past him. 40 knots, that's pretty fast. So there's the USS Cyclops, which went out in the 40s, and 309 men were aboard the ship. The last documented recording or the last communication from them was that they were in the Bermuda Triangle, and it was beautiful. The sun was out, it was gorgeous weather, and then everything vanished. 309 men and an entire ship. And a ship to carry 300 men is not going to be little.
Right.
Gone. They still have not found it to this day. There was a ship in the 90s that they found the wreckage for, and it had been completely snapped in half. And not like I spoke last week on the Titanic, not like the Titanic broke. There are jagged edges. This was a completely clean shear. I did actually see it in a video where they were diving down to see it, and it was wild. It was crazy. I mean, it's a little different now that it's been down there for so long, but shear. Like someone came in with a metal cutting machine and just snapped it in half. It's absolutely mind-blowing. You also have the Royal Navy sent out a ship from Bermuda. It was headed to England, and it completely disappeared, ship and crew. The Douglas DC-3 in 1948 was an airplane. They were flying from Puerto Rico to Miami. 32 people, gone. Airplane gone.
What?
The Connemara 4 was a yacht. It was found, the ship was found with absolutely no one aboard it, and there was evidence that this yacht had survived 3 different hurricanes out in the water, but no one was on it still.
No people.
Crazy.
Oh.
In the 1970s, there was a man flying. He was with 2 other men, and they were in an airplane flying. They came up on clouds, which is pretty normal, and they were seeing flashes of light within the clouds. And they attributed it to an electrical storm, which apparently is also pretty normal, and just, you've got to be cautious. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not a big deal, though. But suddenly, the clouds came together to form a tunnel, and he flew through the tunnel, and when he was deposited on the outside of the tunnel, he was in like a strange foggy mist, and none of his electrical equipment was working. And when they were finally able to see where they were at, they were 100 miles off course. And the amount of time they had been in the air made it entirely impossible that they would have traveled 100 miles.
What?
So he thinks that he went through a wormhole. So this was the 70s. So it's a little bit more recent than, the 1940s. There is a small island. There's a ton of small islands within the triangle. And one of the islands has a lighthouse on it. Mm-hmm. It's an important lighthouse. They keep it lit because of cruise ships and things going through the area. It can be kind of a danger. There's typically 2 keepers on this island for this lighthouse, and the only way to get to and from this island is obviously a boat. It's an island,
right?
But it's not
too small to fly on. Probably.
Yes, yep, and you can't swim, back and forth. It's just not close enough to anything for that. So in 1969, they noticed that there was something amiss, and people went to the island to check on the lighthouse, and they had disappeared. Both keepers were gone. No explanation of where they went, no evidence. They didn't leave notes or document why they would have left. They were just gone. There was an airplane that was, and I don't have a date on this one, unfortunately. This one was kind of vague. It was called the Irving Rivers, and it was approaching to land, and the control tower could see the lights of the airplane, but the plane never landed. It just disappeared.
What?
Wild. Like, it just blows my mind. How? Where could they have gone? There was a yacht, named Witchcraft, which, like, stay off of that yacht. Don't get on it to
Bad
begin
idea.
with. Yeah.
Especially in the Bermuda Triangle.
Exactly. Just don't. You're like, you're
tempting the fates.
Yeah. You're mocking them at that point. They clip your string.
Right.
So it was 78 that this yacht went out. They were going to cruise along the coast of Miami and check out the Christmas lights. This is clearly above my pay grade. I have no idea what that means. Besides, I like Christmas lights.
Right.
I don't know what it's like to go cruising in a yacht to see them.
To look at Christmas lights on the coast of Florida.
Exactly.
Wow.
But besides my absolute jealousy, they radioed in and told the Coast Guard, hey, we're dead in the water. We're safe. It's non-emergency, but we're going to need a tow in. 18 minutes later, the Coast Guard arrived, and there was no sign of them. No ship, no people, nothing. It's gone. Completely missing.
Wow.
If you want something a little bit more our time, in 2015, there were 2 boys who went out on their mom's boat fishing. I think they were actually 15-year-olds. And one of them Snapchatted a storm that was coming in. And that was the last communication anyone ever had with these 2 boys. They disappeared. The boat was found 2 days later, void of their keepers, of the boys. Just the boat was okay, but there were no boys on board. So the final one that I have is called the Carol Deering, 1921. So we're traveling back again. This ship ran aground in South Carolina. It was damaged, and when they went on the boat to see what might have happened, they saw that all of the emergency signals had been like lit or sent out, whatever, and the lifeboats and the belongings of the people were missing. They never found them, and it was suspected that the Triangle actually caused a mutiny, which caused these people to leave their ship.
Okay.
In the Triangle, it's one of 2 places on Earth. The other place is near Japan, called like the Devil's Sea or something.
Oh, good.
Yeah. It's one of the only 2 places in the world where your compass will show you true north, not magnetic north. And true north is approximately 20 degrees off from magnetic north. So that's sort of wild. There's a vortex that will kill all of your equipment. It will make it go wild. Sailors believe it's a portal to another world.
Atlantis.
Exactly. That is actually one of the theories of the Bermuda Triangle, which is my favorite theory. Atlantis. That's what I want it to. If it can't be the Garden of Eden, as I brilliantly came up with as a child, it should be Atlantis. Mm-hmm. There's also mermaids, aliens. There's always aliens.
Of course.
Other dimensions, and methane bubbles under the sea that cause things to blow up and also cause you to go crazy.
Oh.
Better than methane. So you're welcome for that.
Yes.
Now, unfortunately, comes the time where I ruin all of the fun of the Bermuda Triangle.
But I wanted to be a believer.
I know. Well, you can totally logic your way out of my logic. It's completely okay. So some of the weird stuff, like the ghost ships, turns out that the Bermuda Triangle, unfortunately, is between where the South Pole and the North Pole wind patterns meet up. And because of that, they don't have much of an air pattern there. And so back when they relied on sails to move, there was no wind. And thus they would start running out of supplies. They couldn't get going, and they would start drinking salt water, which kind of a cool quote. I mean, sort of morbid, I guess, now that I'm saying it out loud. Kind of a cool quote was, the moment you take your first drink of salt water is the moment you start dying. Because it's real bad for you. Your kidneys don't like it.
No, they don't.
The other interesting thing is, like, if a storm is coming in or if you have run out of supplies, your brain doesn't always think of logical things. Sometimes it just immediately tells you, go save yourself. And that might sometimes mean jumping off a boat because of a storm coming at you. Once you're off the boat, your brain's like, oh, poo, we made a mistake.
This was the wrong choice.
And then it's too late because now there's a storm and your ship is over there and you're over here and shark. But the other thing is the sheared in half boat. There are hundreds of those on the floor of the Bermuda Triangle, but they actually do have an explanation. This kills me that there are explanations for all this.
I just assumed there's no way there could be an explanation
Exactly,
for this.
Right. So these things called rogue waves can happen. And they can happen in the middle of the ocean. And they can be anywhere from like 10 to 100 feet tall. So these waves can come. And if your ship goes up on it, you're on a point. And your ship, I'm using my hands like the people listening to us can hear this, but your ship is on top of it and it will just break in half. And there's so much weight and so much pressure that it will be a completely clean break. It doesn't even need to pull or anything. It just snaps. It's just absolutely wild. And then the most sad and unfortunate thing was an insurance adjuster talking about the Bermuda Triangle. And he said, I understand that people want to fear this and be excited about this, but the Bermuda Triangle doesn't even show up on the 10 most dangerous chunks of ocean to travel. And he said, people who run the world right now are real concerned about their investments. And if you had a ship and you wanted to go through the Bermuda Triangle, your insurance company, if they were real worried about you not making it, would make sure they were going to get their money. And the fact that your insurance rates don't skyrocket for crossing the Bermuda Triangle shows you that there is nothing wrong. And it makes me really sad that he's completely right.
That is such
absolutely
a good
right.
point.
I know, absolutely.
And I could
so
apply
gross.
that to so many things in my life
Right?
that I worry about.
It's so disheartening because it's so much fun.
Yeah.
They do think that this all started in the 60s. There was a man who wrote for a fiction magazine, stories, fun stuff. He wrote an article vaguely alluding to the Bermuda Triangle being a source of magic and mayhem, and that's where people started picking it up. Really gained its momentum in the 90s, and then scientists were like, no, we're gonna put this to bed, and they did. And then the insurance adjusters were like, yeah, scientists are right. And I just wanted to believe in mermaids.
There's still a chance.
Absolutely.
They just don't live in the Bermuda Triangle.
True.
Or they do, but they kill everyone that sees them.
Like the angel in the Garden of Eden.
Yes. So really what happened is the insurance adjuster is from that world. And he is trying to deter you from investigating further by telling you it's much too boring because there's no dopamine in that.
I absolutely accept your theory. It is fact.
Yes.
The scientists were paid off by the Atlanteans.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, this is the only science I will accept.
This is obviously the only answer.
Absolutely.
That is.
I really appreciate you coming in and saving that for me because I knew it was going to end it on a low note, and I didn't like it, but it had to be done.
So you must be the pessimistic one.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I'm here with the optimism to slide in
I love
and bring it right back around.
It's because of those houseplants. They've really been doing it for you.
They bring me so much joy.
When you bring me a snake plant, I'll understand.
I was going to bring you a spider plant, but I will also bring you a snake plant.
Please
because
don't.
those are really hard to kill.
Perfect.
Yes.
We should have people on our Facebook page vote for the name of my snake and spider plants.
Yes.
They can name them. We will they'll be our mascots.
Yeah, perfect.
Our dopamine mascots.
Mm-hmm. I could put googly eyes on them.
Beautiful. My Roombas, I do have 2, have googly eyes on them. Bebop and Rocksteady.
Same. My Roombas also have googly eyes.
There's a company out
And
there
names.
that makes a lot of money off of dressing up Roombas. And I'm here for it.
Yeah.
We need the dopamine.
This is completely off topic, but my favorite part of the day and age we live in now is remembering all the things of our childhood that I wished we could easily access, like googly eyes.
Right.
And now they're just at our fingertips within days.
Yeah. I absolutely love it.
Amazon just delivers it to the door. You need some googly eyes? I got you.
When you can get
You need some funny colored lights? I got you. You're not limited to $7 light bulbs at Meijer anymore.
Absolutely.
You can get $7 strings of lights that turn any color you want them to.
And you can control them with your phone.
or random remotes.
Our lamps have light bulbs in them, and obviously smart light bulbs. Let me bring that to less stupid.
You put light bulbs in your lamp. Is that what they're for?
It's gonna be magic when you do it. Trust me.
My whole life.
So smart ones. They're
Yes.
smart ones, and they turn all the colors.
Yes.
And the blue ones make it look like things in my room are glowing.
Mm-hmm.
It's magic.
I was showing a house a couple weeks ago, and they had like a island basically with 2 pendant lights over it. And part of my job as a realtor is I turn all the lights on and off. So I come in and I turn all the lights on, and these 2 pendant lights, like one is a white bulb and one is a yellow, and I'm like, oh, that's lame, because when you're staging a house, you try to make sure the light bulbs are the right color, or the same color at least. But for some reason I hit the light switch again later, and the bulbs were different colors. So now one was yellow, or they were opposite. The yellow one was white now, and the white one was yellow, and I was like, what is happening? And I did it again, and then one turned blue. And just as I was starting to panic, I remembered that smart bulbs are a thing now. And
They're
they had
amazing.
just put Wi-Fi smart bulbs in here, not thinking about it. And apparently they just change random colors when you turn them on and off.
I like to think that there was another switch in that kitchen that would have played music had you flipped it on.
I hope so. That would be a fun thing to find
Absolutely.
later. in a house.
Absolutely. I think as far as like cool random tricks go, that would be a fun one.
I'm going to start hiding them places.
Yes. They have tiny speakers now. You could put them
Yeah.
in there. I love it. I'm here for it.
Perfect.
So I hope that we brought you guys some dopamine today.
I feel like that was a good amount of dopamine.
That was I liked it. I'm pretty doped out.
Perfect. It's better than that.
Better than that.
Better than nothing.
Look, I only took this topic so that I could put that joke in.
I appreciate the long game on that.
I got this.
You've been planning that forever.
Way too
apparently.
long. The moment I learned about the Bermuda Triangle, I was like, I'm going to play this someday.
Mm-hmm. That's how you started the optimist and sometime pessimistic optimist show way back when. You were like, someday
I'm going to use
I can
this.
talk about the Bermuda Triangle on this radio show.
Exactly.
I'm going to have with my best friend.
Exactly. And it was worth it, I'm going to say. And it was great knowing you. Now that I've done it, I don't need this anymore.
And now we're done. Friendship over.
I think that we end our friendship in every show. This is going to be our shtick.
Oh, there they go, ending their friendship again.
I'm so tired of it. It's played out.
Never.
I
Not
mean,
us.
we've tried. It doesn't work.
Mm-mm.
We've tried to like grow apart, come back together every time.
Here we are.
Sitting in my, I like moved closer to you. But anyway, so
Right,
hopefully
so-
we've given you all some dopamine.
Yes. Here's your dopamine dose for the
Hope
week.
we put it where you needed it. Hope it was better than meth. I hope you're feeling all doped up.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
on
you.
Dungeons and
Dopamine.
Dopamine.